And she goes, when I first met you, she goes, when you called, I started thinking about you, and how our evolution, she was 18 and I was 6 when I met my godmother's daughter. We all got back together. And I used to go to 148th Street, and she goes, you were a quiet fucking kid. She goes, you built models. She goes, you had a million fucking models. She goes, you would lock yourself in a room and put on music and build models all fucking day. 10 hours, 3-4 models in a day. It was brilliant. You paint them and like this. I don't remember. I really don't remember like a little thing.
Really?
And she goes, but then you got hit in the head with that lunchbox. And that was the beginning of the end. She goes, not that the lunchbox made you crazy. You just didn't like it. It brought the real inside of you out. You were scared. You were timid. You didn't know the language. She goes, but once they hit you in the head with that lunchbox that day, everything changed. She goes, you became aggressive. You got stitches. And even in the hospital, I remember you told us that night at dinner at your mother's bar, you said, this will never happen to me again. Nobody will ever hit me in the fucking head with a lunchbox. In fact, I'm going to hunt them down tomorrow. And they all looked at me like, Jose Antonio, you can't go hunting these kids down in Central Park. And I went to Central Park by myself. And then when I moved to Jersey, I was so insecure about being Cuban that the first day I went out, there was a fight. And I knew for me to get through to these guys, I had to jump in that fight and stick up for this kid that was getting beat up by himself. As crazy as it was, he was 1 kid against 8. That's just crazy. Bruce Lee can't do that shit. But in the back of my mind, I knew for me to get into this neighborhood. I had just come from New York City, where there was a couple Spanish people, there's Puerto Ricans, whatever in the neighborhood. I was moving to North Bergen, New Jersey in 1960, 1970. There's not too many Spanish people. They were in Union City. They were that way, and they were in West New York. They weren't in North Bergen. So I lived in that house for a year before I went out. Do you know that? A year I lived in that house. I would always go to my mother's bar in Union City. I wouldn't go play with the kids in the neighborhood. And my mom would tell me, oye, calabaza, calabaza, todo mundo, you got to go. You got to go play. And one day I left with my white clothes on. Because I used to dress them. My mom used to dress me in white with the white sneakers, with a gold chain. And I went around the corner. I heard them yelling and screaming. And I jumped in and backed that kid. And my life I never looked back. I always had to follow that mentality. I always had to be fucking nuts. But what people didn't know was that I wasn't trying to be nuts. I really was fucking nuts. It just came to me natural. And then as I got older, I got the Cuban in me. And I worked very hard to get that Cuban man out of me. The jealousy, the quick reaction, my hand would come up first. I wouldn't even give a fuck. I'd come flying through a window. I worked hard to get that out of my system. Like I really had to work hard to get the cubanismo, what do you call it? The cubanazo out of your system. Yeah. Because it was going to take me down. It still takes me down. That's why I avoid a lot of different situations. We're going to have Steve Byrne on the podcast here in a couple of weeks. And he called me this year to ask me if I wanted to do his show. And I thanked him because I go, the last time I saw you, I was very crazy. I went at somebody at the Comedy Store. And as they were breaking us up, I remember looking, and it was Steve Byrne, and looking at his face going, holy fuck, this guy's nuts. And my anger wasn't towards Steve Byrne. But him seeing me in that situation always made me very embarrassed in front of Steve Byrne. I never wanted to see Steve Byrne again. If he wouldn't have called me, I wouldn't have been his friend anymore because he saw me. It's like the night I stuck up for Marilyn. My friend died, and somebody kept torturing her when she was alive, this fucking producer from L.A. And at the wake, he showed up to the wake. He had the balls to show up for the wake. You know me, Doug. That's my fucking realm. I'm from the world that I would die. If you're going to come, how are you going to bust somebody's balls when they're alive, then walk into his wake? Not when I'm alive. Not on my fucking clock. And I went off, and that reputation followed me in L.A. People don't mess with me because I went off. I made the guy leave. I told him, I'm going to get off the stage. And when I got off the stage, I'm going to go at you, your attorney, and your wife. And I meant it. I didn't care. In my world, where I come from, I'm fucking nuts. But I work very hard. For people don't see that, I work very hard. I avoid a lot of contact with people. I already know this. I knew this at 30. I knew when I got out of prison that was one thing for me to do what I was doing as a comedian, that I had to calm that down and that's why I avoid it. I avoid it, number one. Number two, when something happens, I attack that situation right off the bat so it doesn't eat away at me. Can't eat away at me, because if I let it eat away, and I see you, then it's going to be bad for you. It's going to be really fucking bad for you. So I can't let it eat away on me. I really can't. I get fucking hot. So I got to call you at your house and go, hey, dog, this is the situation. And if you hang up on me, then I'm going to go to your house and light it on fire. That's how crazy I am. That's how fucking nuts I am. And it's just, I don't want to hit nobody. I just don't want nobody going at it. I don't like, I'm from old school. You don't even, my favorite line in The Godfather is, they should have stopped Hitler in Munich. If they would have stopped in Munich, we wouldn't have had this fucking problem. And that's why I go crazy. And I've worked very hard to eliminate that from my life, to eliminate that, whatever. So that's the craziness I have. But it's a thin line. It's the same craziness that fueled me to keep doing what I do. Because my thing that fuels me is I'm proving a fucking point to you. I'm proving a point that when we went and told people that we were going to be comedians, they told me I was a felon. They told me I was too old. They told me it was too hard. They told me 1,000 reasons why. But I believed in myself. And I also believed that if they knew about my life and who I was inside, it would help me. And that craziness is what keeps me waking up every morning to prove my point, that anybody could do what the fuck I do. Everybody tells you can't do this. You put limitations on yourself. This morning I got in the car. I was going to go to jiu-jitsu. And in the car this morning, I was talking myself out of it, Rudy. Talking myself out of it. But then that Cuban voice that says "Vete singal" and all those bad words came, and I fucking shot down the Beverly Hills. So that crazy, you're right. That crazy is what fuels me. What brought the conversation up was we had lunch one day, and you had said to me that in the music business, there's a thin line between mental health and the artist. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing in comedy. I mean, you're right. What makes somebody get up and say, I'm going to fucking live 3 or 4 years in this life of sleeping in floors? And everybody's done it. If you listen to Guns N' Roses, Slash, Aerosmith, everybody's fucking paid that price. But you got to eat a bug one day. You got to eat a Coke snot. That's it. That's all there is.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. But you know what? Like you, I know you, and I used to hang out with Sam Kinison and a bunch of other
Jimmy Schubert, who did this show.
Jimmy Schubert and comedians, and all you guys, as crazy as you are, you guys are the nicest people, most generous people I've ever known. Sam was out of his mind generous. I mean, like beyond. I mean, it was like embarrassing generous. Type of a guy. So it's, again, going back to being crazy. It's not about being evil.
No,
it's
not
about
at all.
not knowing any boundaries.
No boundaries. Who gives a fuck?
You're limitless to what you really want to achieve in life.
Now, were you there the night that Sam and Billy Idol went on it?
Oh God, I was on stage.
What happened? What the fuck happened?
Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. It's very simple. Sam was, used to do 2 shows a night. So on the first show, he hadn't gone to sleep for about 2 or 3 days. So we were up his suite. Lenny Bruce's mom was there because she always hung out with Sam. And and the whole gang, the
Carla Bow, Lenny Clark, Mitchell Walters,
Alan Steffen, all of the Jimmy Schubert, all those guys. And so Sam used to bring on stage Sabrina and Malika, Malika became his wife, and Sabrina was his sister-in-law, right? And they would be dressed like showgirls, Las Vegas showgirls outfits with the feathers, because they used to be showgirls before they met. So we're on stage playing Wild Thing, the song. And Billy Idol is there, and he's on stage doing his Billy Idol thing, and he starts grabbing Malika and Sam, which has he went nuts, So we get off the stage, go back up to his suite, and he's like throwing shit around, and he's just like going insane, saying, next time on the next set, I'm gonna fucking deck up, on stage, all of that. So second show comes around, and he does his comedy, and then we do our song, and Billy was gone, but his sidekick was there. So Sam just decked his friend because he couldn't get to Billy, and that's what happened. Caesar's Palace.
That must have been fucking. Listen, the reason why I got into comedy was after I read the Lenny Bruce book. I was wafering. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I was leaning towards comedy, but once I read Ladies and Gentlemen, I knew it was for me. And when I was seeing all that, when I was watching Sam go crazy, and I knew he had the outlaws and the craziness and the fucking hotels and the crashing cars, that was another part that lured me to this craziness. It really is craziness. When you were there, when you were part of this, were you looking around saying to yourself, this is just insane? This guy's a comic.
Yeah, it was
playing fucking music, and
it was more insane than any musician I ever been around. Yeah. It was beyond rock and roll. It was comedian crazy. Richard Pryor stuff, it was level, it wasn't, yeah. And you're talking to a guy who was in the same band with Ozzy. I played with Ozzy, but no, Sam Kinison was more crazy than Ozzy. Yeah.
I can't even imagine that shit.
Yeah.
This morning I was driving and they were talking about the Pink Floyd album, the new Pink Floyd album. Did you hear it yet? I haven't listened to it. But the beauty of it was that 2 weeks ago, that fuck Roger Waters came up and said, I have nothing to do with this album, And you have, in a band, you have these four people, and there's always this one little ego that floats around, but he controls it or he doesn't. To me, these egos destroy the music business with their craziness. One is Roger Waters. I don't know. I've never met David Gilmour. I don't know how crazy he is or the rest of the guys. I don't know what happened, but I know it. When I think of crazy ego, I think of Roger Waters and I think of Sting. As much as I love Sting and as much as I love the Police, What happened? Do you know? How the fuck does this happen?
No.
That your importance... Because when I was thinking about, like, Sting, for example, so you're that important that you're going to break up this band and take away from us, fans, for your ego? The same thing with Roger Waters. And then the fucking guy goes, I don't know what David Gilmour says. I don't know. He goes to release this album, and Roger Waters says, I have nothing to do with this album. It's just an album of instrumentals, right? I don't even know if you know about it. Doesn't fucking matter.
It's just, people like that is just, I have never heard what the voices in their heads are saying or what they sound like. So it's kind of hard for me to put myself in that
position.
Because there's going to be some crazy motherfuckers going on in his head telling them shit.
Well, it's kind of what I was asking earlier. Like, if you were in a band, maybe not you, but don't you think a comedian, since they're always by themselves, like if you were suddenly in a band with a group of people, don't you think that ego the same thing would happen? I'm surprised it doesn't happen more.
I don't know.
I got a question for you. Do you consider yourself an artist?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Because that's the problem with musicians. Or most of them who consider this is art, what I'm doing. And I'm not doing it to please the audience. I'm doing to please my artistic intentions or vision. Do you ever go on stage like that?
No. No, never. That's why I don't like the word artist as much as it's used, especially in this town, especially in life. I'm an artist. So for me, when you say you're an artist, that means you got a trust fund. And your parents send you money every month, and you get to try different shit every month. Yeah. That's what you're telling me. When somebody says artist, my ears always go up. And I look over at a coffee shop because that's where I hear that
that's
word.
You just mentioned, when I think of an artist, I think of Van Gogh.
Right.
He sold one painting to his brother in his lifetime and cut his ear off.
Right. No, I think of if somebody refers to themselves as that, but I get the art and I get that what I'm doing is an art. Mm-hmm. And because of that, maybe I'm an artist. Mm-hmm. Because stand-up is set-up, punchline, joke-telling, and storytelling. I take that and I mix it around. That's the art.
Yeah.
When you learn to play the bass...
But we learn to play instruments so we can deliver a message. And a message, there's a structure just like you have in your storytelling.
Right.
It's the same thing with a song. There's a structure to it. So there's definitely an art to being a comedian, because you're telling a story, you're putting people in a state of hopefully happiness when you tell your jokes, And from the moment there's a middle, I mean, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to your act. So there's an artistry to it, just like being a musician. But I don't think you take it as seriously as a lot of these guys.
No. I consider art like the first instrument I ever played was the bass. Mm-hmm. I learned the pastoral music. Mm-hmm. I didn't like the bass because it was boring as fuck until I watched you play it. Mm-hmm. Then I wanted to go sign up again. Do you understand me?
Yeah.
That's what I call an artist. Your interpretation of what I just showed you. There's 1,000 front kicks. There's 1,000 front kicks, but the way you throw it, that's your art.
Well, it's because I went to a lot of shows in Miami, and I saw Miami was a unique place to play back in the 70s because it was either the beginning of your tour or the end of the tour, because logistically, a lot of the bands that came from England, Europe and England, would come in and bring their equipment through the port, Fort Lauderdale, Miami port. That's how they brought their gear. So they would either begin the tour there and they would rehearse at the Sportatorium for a week. And, so you either saw the first show, which was really not the best of their tour, or you saw the last show, that traditionally a last show with English bands, they used to pull all these gags on each other. They would throw whipped cream and get hit with eggs during the set and stuff like that. So either ways, you were going to see a pretty shitty show because it was going to be the first show or the last show of the set. So I saw a lot of boring performances from a lot of guys that were really high because plus, in addition to that, was the drug capital of the world at that time in the 70s, So they were high on blow, heroin, or booze, or all of them at the same time.
We're going in like fucking Marines, you understand me?
Welcome to church, motherfucker.